Happy Tuesday, folks, and welcome back to WrestleRant for my review of WrestleMania 12, as seen on the WWE Network. The entire WrestleMania season right here on WrestleRant on the YouTube channel is dedicated to watching old WrestleManias, reviewing them, and hopefully you guys can go back and check them out on the road to WrestleMania as WrestleMania 31 quickly approaches in less than 5 weeks as I film this. But WrestleMania 12 I thought was a really good WrestleMania, like WrestleMania 10. Not much to it because the Iron Man matchup, the 60-minute Iron Man matchup in the main event kind of took up a third of this show. But I really thought on the whole, though, it was a pretty good WrestleMania. Kicking off the show, a 6-man tag team match. Camp Cornette, Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog. Kind of a random reunion of all these three guys, defeating the team of Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna. So a pretty fun tag team match. I mean, I enjoy all these guys. I'm a huge Vader fan. Owen Hart is awesome. The British Bulldog, I think, is very underrated. Ahmed Johnson was what he was. Jake Roberts, one of the best of all time, and Yokozuna is a legend in his own right as well. So kind of a random mixture of 6 legends, and I think most of them are already in the WWE Hall of Fame. Or only Yokozuna and Roberts are, so only a third of these guys are. But still, though, I think most of them do deserve to be in there. Maybe with the exception of Ahmed Johnson. Everyone else, I think, does. But pretty fun matchup to kick off the show. I enjoyed it. Really no meaning to it, except from Cornette being in the corner of his team and Mr. Fuji being in the corner of Yokozuna's team. But aside from that, real no meaning. I mean, it didn't really have much meaning to it, but I did enjoy it for what it was because I enjoy all 6 of these guys, so maybe there's personal bias, but I thought it was a fun way to kick off the show. Got a good amount of time, too, and Vader, Owen Hart, and British Bulldog picking up the victory for their team, so good stuff to kick off the show. Hollywood Backlap Brawl between Rowdy Piper and Goldust. So this really wasn't a match per se. There was no pinfalls or submission. It was basically a glorified brawl all over the ringside area, all over the ring, and all over Hollywood pretty much, because this show took place from Anaheim, California, much like WrestleMania 16 would 4 years later. But this was really entertaining. I know I talked to Goldust a couple of years ago on Spoilers, on my Spoilers podcast. The interview is up on my website, nextairwrestling.weebly.com. Shameless plug if you want to listen to that interview. But he himself said, when I asked him what's one of your favorite matches of all time, and he said this one. I mean, of all the matches that this guy's been in his career, and I mean, I filmed that back in 2012 before he came back to the company in 2013. So maybe that answer has since changed. But he cited this matchup as one of his favorite of all time, and it's not really all that surprising. It was a very fun matchup. Goldust was a great fucking heel, and Roddy Piper was the perfect babyface. And like I've said before in my WrestleMania reviews, people look back on the career of Roddy Piper as him being one of the greatest in-ring heels of all time, but he was only a heel for a very small portion of his career. For most of his career, he was a beloved babyface, and he was awesome in both roles. But I thought this was awesome. They went all over the place, and the most hysterical part about the matchup, obviously, if you watch Countdown, you know what I'm talking about, or if you've seen the match in its entirety on the WWE Network or whatever, if you watched the WrestleMania, when they did the chase, when Goldust took off and Piper went after him, Goldust took his gold car, and I don't know what the name of the car was, but Roddy Piper took some white van or something, but they took the same van that O.J. Simpson used in his iconic chase that same year, and they used that same footage, and they didn't really shy away from it either. They didn't pretend it was real. I mean, I think one of the other commentators did. I think Jerry Lawler did on commentary. Mr. McMahon was like, oh, that looked familiar, so that was pretty funny on the way they handled it. But they ended up coming back later on the night, right before the main event, and they were just kind of brawling in the ring, and it ended when Roddy Piper stripped the clothes of Goldust, and he revealed to have been wearing gold lingerie, so that was pretty comical, but a really fun matchup. I mean, like I said, you can't really call it a matchup, but for what it was, and I liked how it was nicely spaced throughout the show. They gave updates during each of the matches, like what's going on, so that was pretty nice. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I thought both guys were great in their roles for what it was. I thought it was a really entertaining matchup. Up next, the WrestleMania debut of Stone Cold Steve Austin with the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in his corner, defeating Savio Vega. The matchup I didn't think deserved as much time as it did. I mean, they could have given more time to the Warrior and Hunter. And I'll talk about why that matchup was so short in a minute. But this matchup got about 10 minutes. I'm not going to complain about more wrestling because it wasn't a bad match. I thought it was good. But Stone Cold Steve Austin was not the badass motherfucker that we would end up seeing a couple years later. He was still in the mode of the ringmaster. He got the new name, but he was still the ringmaster, and he had still Ted DiBiase as his manager. He would not be the Stone Cold Steve Austin that we would come to love and know many years later. This was the origins of the Stone Cold Steve Austin character. It wasn't a bad matchup. It was fine for what it was. The people didn't really get into it because it's pretty much just a glorified win for Stone Cold. It wasn't supposed to be an Icon Classic or anything, an Iconic Classic matchup. We would get that in the main event, actually. But, yeah, I thought the matchup was really good for what it was. I mean, nice showing for Stone Cold, if anything else. And they obviously had plans to push him, so it was a logical win for him. So good stuff there. Up next, the Ultimate Warrior versus Triple H, or should I say Hunter Hearst Helmsley, his WrestleMania debut as well, with Sable in his corner. And I'll get to her significance in a second, which I thought was pretty interesting. The Ultimate Warrior, though, after a multi-year absence from the WWE, I think maybe 4-year absence, making his return to WrestleMania 12. And I guess initially he had, and I'm pretty sure this is true from what I've read anyway, I've never heard it confirmed anywhere by like either Warrior or Triple H himself, but from what I've heard, Warrior didn't want a job to Triple H, and he said he didn't want to give him a competitive matchup, so he pretty much just squashed him in a minute and a half. So it was pretty fucking entertaining to watch. I mean, for no other reason than that. And I'm a huge Warrior fan, so I enjoyed him coming out with a remix entrance theme and the huge fucking ovation this guy got when he came out from the crowd. It was insane, like the biggest pop on the show. It was awesome. So I mean, the matchup was only a minute and a half, and it was comical because I think Triple H at one point did his finisher then and now on the pedigree, and Warrior completely no-sold. He got right back up. It was so fucking funny, unintentionally funny. It wasn't supposed to be comical. It wasn't intended to be comical, but I thought it was just so funny, so hilarious. So good stuff there. Warrior is completely squashing Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Did it make sense from a business standpoint? Absolutely not. It pretty much is buried. That was the definition of being buried, if there ever was one, with Triple H being, just completely decimated, having his offense no-sold by the Warrior. But being the huge Warrior maniac that I am, the huge Warrior fan that I am, I really enjoyed to see him return the ovation that he got on this show. And Sable, like I mentioned before, the interesting note about her was that around this time, Triple H had different women kind of accompanying him to the ring, and Sable was that person on the show, and he blamed his loss on her, and he was kind of arguing with her backstage. And after this matchup, after this quick squash, we would get an interview backstage with none other than the debuting Mark Mero, the Wild Man. And Triple H was arguing with Sable, and Mark Mero stuck up for Sable, kind of taking it to Triple H, and those two were brawling backstage, and and sticking up for Sable. Mark Mero and Sable would end up being paired together at WrestleMania, or as like a legit couple, I think, both in real life and in storyline. So pretty interesting development there, and this was kind of the debut of those, or kind of the original traces, the origins of that partnership between Sable and Mero. So kind of interesting stuff there, kind of fun to note that. But up next, we got The Undertaker versus Diesel, and Undertaker going 5-0 at WrestleMania. Easily Undertaker's best WrestleMania match up to this point. I know that's not saying much because his first two matches at the event were squashes. His WrestleMania match with Gonzalez sucked at WrestleMania 9, and the match with the previous year, last year, with King Kong Bundy was okay at best. They had a pretty good matchup. It was just slow and plodding for the most part. It was just finisher after finisher, and Undertaker just kind of hitting his finisher at the end and picking up the victory. It was not an exciting match at all. But, like I said, it was the best one up to this point. Diesel looked good in the feed, and I think this was Diesel's final WrestleMania as an in-ring competitor, as he would go on to WCW only a few short months later. So good stuff there. I thought the matchup was solid. Not like a fantastic matchup, but like I said, even though it's not saying much, Undertaker's best WrestleMania matchup up to this point, going 5-0 over Diesel. The main event, of course. What is there to say? What can I even say about this matchup that can do it justice? The Iron Man matchup, 60 minutes on the clock. Shawn Michaels versus the defending champion Bret Hart for the WWE Championship. Just a fantastic matchup all around. Shawn Michaels, like I said, there was really no reason for him to lose that title match the year prior to Diesel, but in doing so, it made his journey to win that championship that much more meaningful. It made it that much more iconic. I mean, this is my philosophy when it comes to wrestling, life, whatever. The longer it takes to do it, the longer it takes to achieve something, to do something, whatever, to succeed at something, the more it's going to mean in the end when you eventually do have that moment. And it meant the most here when Michaels emerged victorious to win that championship after a year journey to win back that belt. The same way that Bret Hart had his year-long journey from WrestleMania 9 to WrestleMania 10, Michaels had that same journey after winning the Royal Rumble back-to-back years to earn another shot, to get a second chance. Lightning in a bottle, striking twice here. with another shot at that WWE Championship on this show. So a fantastic matchup. I watched it for the first time with my friend John at JohnKnapp17 on the Twitter. If you want to check him out, follow him as well. But we watched this on the WWE Network, I want to say back in November or so. I had never seen it before. In my many years as a wrestling fan, I had never seen the match before. So we watched together on the WWE Network. He pointed out a few things. He said that Michaels didn't have the super kick at the time, even though he did, because he used it a few times in this matchup. So we put that theory to rest. But he did note that during this matchup that every 5 minutes, for most of the matchup anyway, at every 5-minute interval, there would be a big move. And that's what I think they talked about it either in WrestleMania Rewind or one of the documentaries in the network or something, where they talked about it. I haven't watched all the content in the network, so I wouldn't know. But that was pretty interesting to note, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, the matchup itself, fantastic. I mean, it really goes down two ways. If you're a hardcore wrestling fan, then you'll love this matchup. I've seen a lot of people say that this was a matchup that got them into wrestling, that made them realize how much they loved this shit, because it was such a great wrestling matchup. I've had some other people say that it could be boring if you show it to the non-wrestling fan, because it's not your typical like high-flying stuff that you see today. It's not hardcore. It's not a bunch of lucha libre action. It's just a lot of technical wrestling, a lot of rest holds, and you can't really blame them. It's the first matchup of its kind in an Iron Man matchup, so it's really not that surprising that they stalled for most of the matchup. But yeah, I thought they did an excellent job. I mean, that really goes without saying, but I thought this was a fantastic matchup on all fronts. I thought it was awesome. And of course, them going overtime and Michaels, I think using the sharpshooter in the last minute or so when he did not tap out. The clock was counting down. People were like, oh, he's going to tap, and he didn't tap out, and they went into overtime, and Michaels a minute later hit the Sweet Chin Music. I don't know if he was calling it at that time, but he would hit the super kick, got the 1-2-3, would win the belt, and just emotion, just an array of emotion coming out from Shawn Michaels after his big title win. And of course, this was the same WrestleMania where he had Jose Lothario, his mentor, in his corner. He came down from the rafters, that iconic entrance, another amazing visual at WrestleMania that will go down in history as one of the greatest WrestleMania entrances of all time, one of the greatest entrances of all time. But yeah, great stuff there, and the moment itself would obviously mean a lot to Shawn Michaels and the fans. A great moment for any fan watching this back or in the moment that was watching it when it initially happened, but an amazing way to close off the show with Shawn Michaels winning his first WWF title and Bret Hart kind of storming off in disgust. I think this would be not his final WrestleMania, I'm sorry. He would obviously come back at WrestleMania 26. I don't really count that because that match was awful. Well, we'll get to that when WrestleMania 26 comes around. But he would have another match the following year, of course, with Stone Cold Steve Austin. But yeah, on the whole, I think this is a really good show. It really flew by because even the main event match, the Iron Man match, you would think it would drag to an hour. For me, maybe it's because I was kind of multitasking. I was doing other things at the time I was watching this matchup, but it really didn't seem to drag at all. I thought the matchup, it kept your interest. It wasn't boring. I thought it was awesome. To each their own. Maybe if you find it boring, I don't really know unless you watch it for yourself. I thought it was fantastic, so I really enjoyed it. But that capped off the show, and everything else, it was a solid mid-card. They really could have counted just on the main event to sell the show and really not giving two shits about anything else, but that's not really what they did at all. They did a really nice job of building up a solid undercard with Taker versus Diesel, two of the biggest stars in the WWE at that time. Warrior making his grand return to WrestleMania, Triple H making his WrestleMania debut, Stone Cold Steve Austin making his WrestleMania debut, Roddy Piper in one more match at WrestleMania, Goldust having a really nice showing in the Hollywood Backlot Brawl, really fun contest, and an enjoyable six-man matchup to kick off the show. So I thought it was very well-rounded, and one of, if not the best WrestleMania I've watched to this point. That I really couldn't find a problem with most things on the show. Even the squash match between Warrior and Triple H, which was not best for business, ironically enough, given that Hunter was involved. Even that had its moments, especially with the Warrior returning and the reaction that he received. That was incredible. But yeah, really nice, well-rounded WrestleMania that I would absolutely suggest to you to go out of your way to watch on the WWE Network. That being said, I'll be back on Saturday, so in a couple more days, 4 more days from now, with my review of WrestleMania 13 from 1997 as seen in the WWE Network. But in the meantime, in between time, folks, you can find me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Make sure to tweet me with your thoughts on the video and anything else. Always tweeting wrestling and a whole bunch of other shit. So make sure to follow me on there. Always appreciated. Make sure to find me on Facebook at Graham Jason Matthews. Give me the old thumbs up on that page. Make sure to check out nexteraWrestling.weebly.com for my retro reviews and all the other stuff that I write about, my reviews of Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Impact, and everything else in between. Always appreciated. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means a lot to me. And like I said before, make sure to stay tuned until Saturday for my review of WrestleMania 13. In the meantime, folks, have a great week, and I'll catch you guys then.